Imagine dedicating your life to someone else's success, only to be left behind and forgotten. But what happens when your unseen sacrifices finally come to light and shake the foundation of everything? Today, we're diving into the gripping and reflective story of Clara, a maid whose quiet brilliance and unwavering dedication built an empire that wasn't her own. Yet, her journey reveals a truth about justice, power, and self-worth that's as inspiring as heartbreaking. But let me ask you, what would you do if someone else claimed the credit for your work? Hold on to that thought as we begin. Clara grew up in a small town on the outskirts of Chicago. She was the eldest of 4 siblings, the glue that held her struggling family together. Her life was simple, and her dreams, even simpler, to provide a better future for her younger siblings. When she was just 18, she left home to take a job as a live-in maid for the wealthy Braxton family, a family known for their cold demeanor and an air of entitlement. The Braxtons were everything Clara's family wasn't: rich, influential, and completely out of touch with the struggles of the working class. Yet Clara found herself drawn to their sprawling estate, not because of its beauty, but because of the opportunity it represented. "If I can just endure this," she told herself, "I can help my family survive." Her first weeks at the Braxton estate were grueling. She cleaned endless rooms, polished silverware until her hands ached, and lived in a small, windowless room in the basement. The hours dragged on, each day bleeding into the next. But Clara endured. She would rise at dawn, quietly observing the household's routines, taking mental notes on everything. It was during these early days that she realized something peculiar about Mr. Braxton. For all his wealth and power, he was disorganized and impulsive. His staff tiptoed around his mood swings, fearful of upsetting him. Clara, however, saw opportunity in his chaos. Clara wasn't just any maid. She had a sharp mind and a knack for organization that even the Braxtons couldn't ignore. Within weeks, she wasn't just cleaning rooms, she was managing schedules, solving logistical issues, and even drafting correspondence for Mr. Braxton's growing chain of luxury hotels. What started as harmless help soon turned into a pattern. Mr. Braxton would pass off her ideas as his own, presenting her carefully crafted strategies as products of his genius. One rainy afternoon, Clara was tidying Mr. Braxton's study when she noticed an opened letter left on his desk. It was from a major investor, praising him for a brilliant new strategy that had boosted profits at one of his flagship hotels. Clara's eyes scanned the words, her pulse quickening. The strategy described was her idea, an idea she had shared with Mr. Braxton just a week prior. The realization hit her like a weight. "My work," she thought. "Someone else is claiming my work." That night, Clara sat alone in her basement room, staring at the walls. She told herself it didn't matter, that she was just a maid, and her contributions were small. But how long could she keep telling herself that? Over the next 5 years, Clara became the backbone of the Braxton empire. She developed marketing strategies, streamlined operations, and even proposed innovations that put Braxton hotels ahead of their competitors. Mr. Braxton, meanwhile, basked in the glory. Awards, magazine covers, and accolades poured in. To the outside world, he was a self-made visionary. But behind closed doors, it was Clara's sweat, tears, and ideas driving the success. Clara's days became longer as her responsibilities grew. She would work late into the night drafting proposals, only to wake up before dawn to begin her maid duties. Yet, despite her exhaustion, she pressed on. She told herself she was learning, that this was her education, even if it wasn't formal. Would you keep going if someone else kept taking credit for your hard work? Clara did. Why? Because she convinced herself it was temporary. She thought, "One day he'll acknowledge me. One day he'll reward my loyalty." But loyalty, Clara would soon learn, is often one-sided. That day came, or so she thought. One evening, Mr. Braxton approached Clara with an offer. He promised her a formal promotion to executive assistant and a substantial raise. Clara's heart leapt with hope. Finally, recognition. Finally, a glimpse of what she deserved. Days later, a grand announcement was made at a company gala. Clara stood in the back of the room, her hands clasped tightly as she waited to hear her name. Instead, Mr. Braxton proudly introduced his new assistant, the niece of one of his investors. Clara froze, her breath catching in her throat. It wasn't her name. It wasn't her face in the spotlight. Later that night, Mr. Braxton handed Clara an envelope. Inside was a small bonus, far less than what he had promised. Clara stood in her tiny basement room, the envelope crumpled in her shaking hands. Her reflection in the cracked mirror looked foreign. She had given everything to Braxton Hotels. And yet, she was nothing more than a ghost in her own story. Days turned into weeks, and resentment burned within Clara like a slow flame. One evening, while serving dinner, she overheard Mr. Braxton gloating to his guests about his unmatched business instincts, her fists clenched beneath the serving tray. Enough, she thought. Clara had been keeping meticulous records for years, documents, handwritten notes, and emails, tracing every innovation and success back to her. She spent days compiling everything into a single package and, with trembling hands, sent it anonymously to a journalist known for exposing corporate corruption. The headline broke within a week. The woman behind Braxton Hotels, a hidden genius exposed. The public outcry was deafening. Investors pulled out, employees whispered behind Mr. Braxton's back, and the media demanded answers. Mr. Braxton's empire began to unravel, his awards questioned, his integrity shattered, and Clara, she disappeared. Months later, in a small town far from Chicago, Clara opened her own consulting firm. She had no fancy office, just a desk, a chair, and the knowledge she had earned the hard way. Small businesses began to thrive under her guidance. Word of her talent spread, and soon clients sought her name, not her false figureheads. As for Mr. Braxton, his empire crumbled without Clara. He was left with nothing but a tarnished legacy. Clara's story isn't just about injustice. It's about resilience, self-worth, and the power of truth. She taught us that while recognition from others is gratifying, true empowerment comes from within. So I'll leave you with this. Are you building someone else's empire when you could be building your own? Thank you for watching. If Clara's story resonated with you, share it with someone who might need this inspiration. And don't forget to subscribe for more stories that make you think, feel, and grow.